Do you read Sutter Kane? If you don't, that's cool too. I mean, his books really don't exist. Or do they? Welcome back to 2021's Carpentober.
Carpentober.
And if you haven't guessed, I'm going to be talking about the 1994 mind of a movie, In the Mouth of Madness. You know, for the longest time, when it came to John Carpenter's horror movies, 1982's The Thing was considered my favorite. Then in 1994, when I saw In the Mouth of Madness, it was still The Thing, but this film is a strong second place. As a love note to the shaper of 20th century horror himself, H.P. Lovecraft, this picture is just absolute bonkers. But it's bonkers in a good way. In fact, the intro of the movie actually takes place at Arkham Asylum, created by Lovecraft 30-ish years before Batman came around. You could thank Lovecraft for the name of Arkham Asylum, and they probably do. I don't think they're vindictive, although Bob Kane was kind of a jerk to Bill Finger, but we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about In the Mouth of Madness. And it stars Sam Neill, who is now a household name thanks to a small movie called Jurassic Park. You've probably heard of it. And right after fighting off dinosaurs, he stars in this masterpiece of mind-bending macabre mayhem. I did that all in one take. I couldn't even say one take, but I did that in one take. Now, Sam Neill, he plays this guy, John Trent, who is an insurance investigator. And he is ruthless. He's unlikable, really. And he's skeptical of everything. He's kind of an asshole. But he's the best at what he does. Kind of like Wolverine. We're going to talk a lot about comics today during In the Mouth of Madness for no reason. It's just coming up. Because I only do bulleted scripts. I'm off the leash, as you might say. It might get interesting.
Hold on to your butts.
The movie opens up with Sam Neill's character being committed and visited by a therapist played by the great David Warner. Now, David Warner is one of my favorite British actors. He's really good at everything he does, from Tron to Time After Time to even the roles he played in Star Trek. Good stuff, really good stuff. He's a really good character actor. He was even the Loeb in the cartoon Freakazoid.
The lobotomy of Freakazoid, performed with pride by yours truly, the Loeb.
Usually always plays a bad guy. Sometimes he plays some teetering good guy, bad guy, gray area, but he's a really good villain actor. But anyway, he's not a villain in this movie. He just wants to know why Trent is he's been committed, and it's how the story begins. Based on his reputation, Trent is hired by Arcane Publishing because their client, the world's best-selling author, Sutter Kane, goes missing. But more importantly, his new manuscript is missing because, they're a publishing company. They want his new book because his stories are almost like a cult. The books are like, we'll get into it, but the people who read them basically just go mad, but not like dangerous mad. Some do go dangerous mad, but more they just really need the story. No, I take it back. They do go dangerous mad. There's one scene of a bookstore being destroyed by Sutter Kane fans because the new book isn't out yet. So that's fanaticism at its finest. Sutter Kane is played by the legendary actor Jørgen Brochno. I believe that's how you pronounce it. For the longest time, I just called him Jørgen Prochnow because I didn't know. When I was young, 1994, I was 14. I didn't know names had weird actual translations to them, but I did the research, and it's Jørgen Brochno. Even with the rolling R's and everything, I did a really good job on that. John Carpenter designed Sutter Kane. It was like a mishmash of authors, mainly H.P. Lovecraft and Stephen King. And I say personally because of just the way he looks with his hair and his the way he dresses and stuff. Just a tad of Neil Gaiman in there. Not mainly story wise, just the look that Jurgen used. But we'll get into the similarities pretty soon. After he's hired, he picks up all the books that Sutter Kane has written and starts reading them to find if there's like some sort of like hidden meaning, like if he's like, I'm writing this story and this is where I'm gonna go and that kind of stuff. But he just gets sucked in the books. Not literally yet, but they do start messing with his mind, making him see distorted reality, making him dream within his dreams. Unlike Dune, dreams within dreams. It's a book. I could talk about it. But he notices while he's going through them, after he smudges his eyes with pen and ink, which is why that one scene is why I will not use a fountain pen, because I don't want pen ink all over my fingers and then look like a football player afterwards. But while doing his research, he finds the book covers have this weird red like line going through all of them, like a pattern. So he rips off the covers, cuts them out, and he forms the borders of all this red line to form a map to a fictional town in New Hampshire called Hobbs End, which is a very Lovecraftian name for a town. You'll see a lot of parallels between mainly Lovecraft throughout this. I mean, like I said in the beginning, it's his love letter to good old Howard. Now, speaking of parallels, New England was the home to both Lovecraft and Stephen King. And Lovecraft loved using fictional towns in his stories. So Hobbs End was like just a perfect second, I guess, homage to Lovecraft. Although if you look at the book covers, they're very the visual descriptions of them are very much Lovecraftian, with the strange creatures and stuff. But once he finds this out, he goes to the publisher and they send him along with the co-publisher or assistant publisher, Lydia Stiles, played by Julie Carmen. And they set out on a road trip to find a town that does not exist. Trent thinks it's a really good publicity stunt. You know, get this old town that doesn't really exist anymore. And the first person who finds it, you know, wins a lunchbox. I think that's what he says in the movie. But during this trippy night driving sequence, when reality is folding in on itself all the time, because you never know what's real and what's fake throughout this movie. And that's kind of its charm. The first viewing, you get kind of confused with it. But as you keep going, it starts to unravel itself, kind of like a Sutter Kane novel after reading it. But after this trippy night driving sequence, they finally find the town of Hobbs End through it seemed like it was through a magical covered bridge, because all this weird stuff's happening, lights are flashing, and then boom, they come out on a covered bridge and they're right in front of this sign that says "Welcome to Hobbs End," and it's this small town. In fact, it is exactly like it was written in Kane's book, The Hobbs End Horror. The town is so exact to the book that Stiles can quote the descriptions from the book, and it's exactly what she said. Places are in the exact spot where she said they are, according to even like the loose floorboards at the Pickman's Hotel, which is another Lovecraft reference from Pickman's Model, one of his stories. After Trent goes off on his little tangent about how, you know, it's a perfect a tourist attraction to have a town built and manipulated the same way it is in his books, he tries to point out that the church, this big church cathedral place, is not where it's supposed to be, and Stiles corrects him and saying, you know, it's the other way. And they see this giant church, and that's where Kane is. He's in this, it's kind of Gothic, kind of Arabic style cathedral, which is another nod to Lovecraft because he loved using Arabic stuff in his stories as like exotic. And for some reason, Kane is at the church and he's been taking the town's children, which we find out from a very mad Wilhelm von Homburg, or as you may know him, Vigo the Carpathian. He just wants his son back. He's a farmer that works at the town, and his son he's being taunted by him. The kid's standing at the doors of the church, and he can't get to him because of the doors are flapping, and these Dobermans come out of nowhere, and it's a very tense scene with the townspeople wanting to ransack this church with Sutter Kane in there, and Trent and Styles seeing this happen. But sensing danger, they flee. And they split up. Styles gets ready and tries to go to see Kane himself that night as Trent goes to a bar to find more information. And when he's in the bar, Vigo, I'm just going to call him Vigo because Wilhelm von Homburg, I don't know, I'm just going to call him Vigo. He explains that, he should just leave the town. The town's evil. The town's not a good place, and he should leave because he's been told that Kane wants Trent to be there, and that's never a good sign. You're led into a town that doesn't exist because the supernatural horror author that created that town wants you to be there. A lot of things happen between the bar and where I'm going with this, but I can't really talk about it because they're incredibly mind-bending and reality-shaping and spoilery. And I don't want to spoil this movie. This movie's so fun in a weird, trippy way that I want you to experience it if you haven't experienced it. And if you have, you just know what I'm talking about. And there's some children involved and some weird neck craning and some weird old people bondage. It gets kind of David Lynchy in this trip to the town. But after these scenarios, he gets his hands on the manuscript because Sutter Kane wants him to have the manuscript because he told Trent that his job in this life was to have him take this book, like his magnum opus, and send it back to New York. His entire life was, you have this job to come find me and take this story back to the world. So he does. So on the way, he stops and destroys the manuscript because he realizes how evil all of this is happening. He's finally bought into it after his brain's been... he's finally bought into the fact that this book is evil. It should never be read. It should never be seen from the light of day. In fact, one of the spoilery scenes is that Styles gets to see the book forcefully, and it drives her insane. It was another cool sequence. There's a lot of cool monster sequences in this movie. It's not just like, hey, I need a book. You're going to get the book and you're back. No, there's a lot of monsters in this movie, and it should be because it's a Lovecraft story. Well, it's not a Lovecraft story. It's a Lovecraft inspired story, which have monsters from beyond space and time. And that's kind of what it is. Basically Kane is being told the stories to write from these elder beings. But that's not spoiling. I mean, that's if you know Lovecraft, that's the way it goes. But he gets to Arcane and he doesn't have the manuscript. It's two different things. And he tells the CEO of Arcane, played by Charlton Heston, but he tells him what happened. He tells the entire story, and he told him that he destroyed the book. He said it shouldn't be published. But this is not the same reality where this happened. This is not the same reality where Trent destroyed the novel. In fact, Heston tells Trent that he not only gave him the manuscript weeks ago, but that a movie is about to come out. It's already in post-production. And he leaves confused, and he leaves just his mind is just destroyed by now. In fact, so much that he doesn't even realize it, but he kills a man with an axe. And that's what sends him to the asylum where the movie began. Once again, there are some spoilerific final moments, and the movie closes, making you wonder how the movie really ended, because it doesn't end open-ended, but it ends without a final conclusion. It ends with, was Sam Neill really crazy the whole time? Or did Sutter Kane have all these powers given to him? Is this how the world ends? You know, you have all these questions, and I kind of like that in a mind-bending supernatural type of movie. It really messes with you after the first couple watches. And like I said, it's one of my absolute favorite John Carpenter movies. So I've watched it quite a bit until recently. When it was on DVD, I watched it a lot, but when we got into the Blu-ray streaming era, I kind of put it on the back burner, knowing how much I did love the movie. I just didn't watch it as much. But that is In the Mouth of Madness. Like I said, it's not only one of my favorite Carpenter movies, it is one of my favorite horror movies, period. It's definitely in my top 10 list. And it's probably the best film tribute to H.P. Lovecraft that's been done. I mean, Stuart Gordon stuff is always good, but at least Reanimator kind of goes in like a goofy aspect, and which is great. I absolutely adore Reanimator. It's one of my favorite, I'll put on and have a good time movies where I don't have to like sit around and stare at it, but I can like do work around the house and quote it as it's going on. But Reanimator was pretty goofy. All three Reanimator movies are pretty goofy on purpose. You need that levity with such a serious subject matter. But From Beyond, the other Stuart Gordon big Hollywood movie, was not as goofy, but it was also it's a niche film, or niche, depends on how you like to say it. It's a very good movie, very Lovecraftian. But the difference between In the Mouth of Madness and the Stuart Gordon movies are Stuart Gordon is taking these Lovecraft stories, these actual Lovecraft stories, and putting them to film. And In the Mouth of Madness is taking the Lovecraft formula and giving it the Carpenter shine and saying, here, this is how I would make a Lovecraft story. And he absolutely nailed it. And strangely enough, with Lovecraft, being in the early 20th century, I think the reason it worked so well is because he added a missing ingredient of a sprinkling of Stephen King, as he was a Lovecraft fan and helped shape King's writing as well. It really helped that he put in some Stephen King feel to it, mainly because he's a late 20th century author, and this is kind of like what would happen if Lovecraft was writing books today. He would basically be Stephen King Lovecraft. He'd probably be a lot more tolerant towards people too. If you do research on Lovecraft, he was not a very tolerant man, but he had some problems. He had some problems. Now, I can't do one of these videos without talking about the music, because you know who I am, and score is a big, big part of why I love movies. And this was an odd score for John Carpenter. He didn't do it just by himself. He was joined by Jim Lang, known only for doing the cartoon Hey Arnold. But it's a good score. It's a haunting. It's less synthy than most John Carpenter scores, but it creates a horror soundscape. It fits the movie very well, and it has a pretty rocking intro theme to the movie. In fact, it's my favorite my absolute favorite John Carpenter main title theme. Sorry, Halloween. The look and feel of In the Mouth of Madness still holds up to me. Sam Neill is a great leading man in horror. He proved that in The Omen 3 way back in the 80s, and he went on to keep proving it with Event Horizon. I couldn't say Event Horizon. I got so excited. That's another movie I should do maybe in the future. So what do you think of In the Mouth of Madness? Do you love it? Did you used to love it? Do you hate it? Do you hate me? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your feedback on this film. And please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a minute of Carpentober. It also lets me know that I'm not just out here talking to myself, which I'd probably still do anyway. But I like to know that someone is either entertained or at least hate watching. You know, I do it for the people as well. Also, check out cinemadnesspodcast.com to find out where to follow us and what other projects we are up to. Now, if you excuse me, I have a book to read. You were supposed to give me a book.